Make my own rules, play my own games. I don't give a what you
Hi,
say.
I'm Ray.
And I'm Steph,
And this is the SciComm Hotline.
where we gossip about all the cringe and exciting ways science is communicated in real life.
So let's bring the drama.
Wild and free.
Hi.
Hi, Ray.
I'm gonna be coughing into the camera probably. You're gonna see
I
something
love,
like
love that for our listeners. I'm just going to just mute it when I'm editing it.
yeah. I've acid reflux. It's gonna sound beautiful.
When don't you have a medical condition
I
that you're
know,
bringing up to
right?
this podcast?
Well, I think it's a combination of like medical conditions and my oh god, I forgot. Was it when you think you have all the diseases?
Hypochondriac?
Hypochondria. So it's
Yeah.
like, which I feel like at this point, most of my hypochondria has been in some way real, which has
Mhm.
been making me be like, take it serious because there is something. So it's like hypochondria on steroids. No, it's not that bad, but
Yeah.
it's something.
No, but it adds. It's like, what is it? What is it called when you're like training your model and you like it's a reinforcement,
Right,
like you're
right, right,
training your
right,
body. It's a reinforcement.
right, right, right.
But yeah, but how are you? How are you? How's everything going?
I'm doing okay-ish. Ups and
Yeah.
downs. I was at a National Geographic Summit last week, which was really nice, and I needed it. And I think more than like the fact that it was like a summit and a conference and things happen was just like going back to like your communities. A lot of them are mutual friends of ours, which everyone really missed you who know you.
I want to be cool enough to go to the Nat Geo Summit.
You are. You just have to we have to figure out a way to get you into the Nat Geo stuff. Because you are an explorer by heart and a already Nat Geo community person. But I think what I appreciated more was just like the sense of like community and people taking care of each other and being there. Like I think I went in feeling that I'm gonna feel a little like isolated with stuff like happening in Iran. And I just had, people like check in, people were like, hey, like I've been seeing stuff. Do you need anything? It didn't feel isolating. And that
Yeah.
was nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
That's always
did
a
a
good
workshop
remedy.
on social science 101.
Yeah. Tell me about that.
It was good. It was some of the work of there's like a book of John Besley and Anthony Duda on strategic communication, and they wrote another book with a few other collaborators that gets into like the details of science communication, which we're gonna add into the show notes. Please go check it out. I also reviewed that book. But I use kind of like the behavior change models that they described and what is the role of trust. So we introduced some of those like theories of behavior change and trust building. It was 1 hour, so it was like a crash course. And some
Yeah.
of the things we talked about in the last episode, like motivated reasoning, cognitive dissonance, with examples, and then turned it into like this was half of it, and the other half
Mm,
was like having some silly activities where people had to use those theories to design campaigns for them. So, for example, it was shark nurses who are kind of like bottom dweller, like eaters, like in the bottom of the
yeah.
bottom feeders. And there's like this podcast influencer who's like, no more bottom eating. We're now top eaters. Like, we are alpha. So, like, all these like sharks are like going up. So, the campaign is basically to get them to go bottom feed again.
I don't know why it sounds so like queer and sexual.
Okay, that is
Are you
hilarious.
a bottom feeder or a top feeder? I'm actually a little verse. Uh,
So there were like a bunch of these weird scenarios, and I thought, oh, it'd be funny. But the participants, like these are like very creative Nat Geo explorers and storytellers. They like really, really killed it. And the examples, just like the campaigns they came up with, like went above and beyond, hilarious, but also functional in terms of like we've had like some made up data on like interviews and surveys and social media data about like the sharks and everything, and they use those data and they combined it with the things we've learned on how do people change attitude and behavior, and they came up with campaigns for it, which I thought was very, very fun. But I wish you were there because I think it would have been
I know, dude. I was like, man, I
hilarious.
wish I was there just to take notes because that's amazing. That sounds
It was
so
fun. It was fun.
useful.
Yeah, but how are you? What are you excited about? What are you hating on?
Oh, okay. Well, some good hates for our long listeners who know I've always been crying about not having work. I'm doing pretty okay. I'm getting several interviews. I am still getting rejected. But I think what's exciting, I think last year, because of all like the budget cuts and grant cuts, like I felt kind of like hopeless, like, oh, we're screwed.
Mhm.
It feels like people have reworked their stuff and have figured things out. So now like things are kind of like back and moving forward. So there's more opportunities that are happening. So that's exciting. But yeah, while you're at the summit, I've been having this weird I always have this weird relationship with my phone of like I know I'm really addicted to it, so I'm gonna like stop using it, but let me use it more strategically. But then I just end up downloading like games instead of just doom scrolling on social media. So I'm still addicted to my phone, but I'm not consuming social media. But anyways, I'm trying to be a little bit more mindful of like how I'm consuming. But as I'm scrolling, I have like 3 pages now. We have our hotline. Subscribe to our hotline Instagram. We made a personal hotline
Mhm,
Instagram.
mhm, mhm.
Please follow. And then I have like a personal Instagram that's just like for friends and family. And then we have Future Doctors. So I go on Future Doctors to see what everyone's up to. And then sometimes I'll go on threads. And yeah, I just been seeing some interesting discourse that maybe not even discourse. I think it's just like a SciComm 101 thing that we always see other science communicators, other scientists kind of defaulting to, and that's just like the deficit model of communication of just where it started off was that someone posted on threads. This person posted like they were cleaning their apples, and then they're like, oh my goodness, like look at all this whack that's coming out of my apples. Like Big Apple is out there, Big Farm is out there to like kill us and add these other things and blah blah blah.
Wait, so actually,
And
I like Big Apple industry.
big bread, big milk, big apple, so yeah, so it's just someone just put like the amount of waxing down these so-called green apples is ridiculous. I just
Mm.
used hot boiled water to remove the wax from these apples. I was about to use it for juicing, but I had to peel them. And look at all the wax in my ring bowls. There's like photos like showing. It was just interesting to see kind of like the discourse in the threads. So there's people that are like someone put like everything's a conspiracy when you don't know how anything works. Or, they start like just kind of making fun of this person of like how stupid they are. And then I see like other professionals chime in of just like in quotes like sigh as a biologist, like but then there was like a scientist that came in or like maybe a farm person that came in. It's just like, hey, I'm a plant biologist. This is actually called like an epicuticular wax, which is produced by the plant itself to reduce, like they went into like this mini SciComm lesson.
Uh-huh.
But then there's other people of just like, this is why we need education. Like everyone's just like
Mm,
fucking stupid.
right, right, right.
And so yeah, so I don't know. So I think we talk about this a lot all the time, but I guess like the question to pose is like, why do we automatically like default to like the deficit model of communication or like we're we're guilty of this too of just like oh these people are fucking idiots like I talk about it with like even my partner of just like if someone's not believing in our political beliefs or like or what we think is common sense is not common sense to somebody else like the first insult is always like they're fucking idiots.
Yeah.
But we see it in SciComm too of just like and it doesn't help that like everyone in the comments we're always roasting each other in comments. So
Mhm.
nothing's ever really being taken seriously, or if it is seriously, then it just goes too far.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
yeah, I don't know.
I hate the comment sections. I, like, enjoy it and hate it at the same time, but it's also,
Yeah.
like, so heated in the most unhealthy way. I This is such a good example because I think there's so many layers to it. So my first reaction as a person that doesn't understand fruits and vegetables and that kinda stuff was like, "Wait, like, are they" I actually in my head, I was like, "Wait, is there, like, a layer of, like, wax or something they're putting on it to, like, keep the apples, whatever?" So I didn't know what it is, and I was curious, I was like, "Oh, is it, like, pesticides, but, like, normal
Mhm.
pesticide and they're, like, taking it too far?" So I also had the reaction of, "I don't know." However, I think the difference between me and the user is that that users seem to have a lot of other emotions and beliefs associated with it. So, like, big Apple industry continues to do that. So, talking to that person would be very different than talking to me because I think mine was like, I just don't know. I wonder what it is. And I
Mhm.
probably don't have the distrust that they have. So, if someone explained it to me, in fact, like, deficit model works on me because I don't have strong ideological ties or emotions or anything, but this person seemed to have that. And when you comment on that, I feel like it might be, especially the person that was like kind of nice. I was like, hey, like, scientist here, here's the explanation. The deficit model that they did, like the explanation, is actually good for other people that see that post, like me.
Mhm.
So for me, it's
Mhm.
helpful. So if you think of like strategy, I'm like, oh, this is a helpful strategy for someone that doesn't have strong emotions about that. And they really are actually curious about an answer. But for this person who has the strong emotions, that is not probably helpful. And the other ones are not only not helpful, but also probably have a backfire effect for that person to be like, everyone is also horrible. Oh, they think I'm an idiot, but they're actually the idiot because they don't understand how
Yeah.
deep this rabbit hole goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, so, like, I see this, and then I scroll a few more, and then I see, like, a good example of SciComm, which was interesting. Okay, so Dr. Kizzy, I don't know if you know Dr.
Yeah,
Kizzy, but I
COVID vaccine.
exactly.
Mhm.
So, of course, her platform or her SciComm is usually focused on vaccines and all the other stuff, or epigenetics or what not epigenetics,
Just vaccine development,
epidemiology.
stuff,
Yeah,
immunology.
yeah, yeah. Anyway, so she just posted on Threads as well. It's just like, okay, measles is outside. If your child is not vaccinated against measles and you are afraid of measles outbreaks increase, remember that there is absolutely no shame in getting your child vaccinated, even if they're older and past a certain vaccine age, or they have never had any vaccine history at all. But if you think your child has been exposed, like, this is, you have 3 days to do something about it. Yeah, she just kind of went on to like just show a little bit more posting in terms of just like, this is what you can do.
Mhm.
But what I liked about this that was different from the post before is right away, Dr. Kizzy's like humanizing the potential reader
Yeah,
of just like, look, there's no shame,
yeah.
like even if you never vaccinated your person, maybe you're anti-vax your whole freaking,
Mhm,
like you're now as a new mom, you're
mhm,
anti-vax, but then you are a little bit concerned that
mhm.
there's a measles outbreak, like no shame.
Yeah,
So I think I liked that approach too, in terms of like, okay, this is a scientist that did a good, in my opinion, like
mhm.
a good SciComm strategy in terms of like bringing humanity into
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. I love that. Should we pause for a second and talk about what is the deficit model of communication for listeners that might not know what it is or know a little bit and want to
Yeah.
learn more? Okay. Um, Basically, what happened was like for a very long time, scientists thought that, scientists and just people, experts thought that the reason people make like some bad decisions or decisions that are not evidence based or anything like that is because they don't have the information. So there's this like information deficiency. They don't have the facts, they don't have the data. So if we just provide people with the facts that the data of like, hey, here's what the science says, here's what we know, then they're going to change that behavior. And then there was also like even this researcher that sometime later went to this community. So there was a community, I think somewhere in like Britain, and this was when the Chernobyl disaster happened, nuclear power plant. It was an explosion. The nuclear debris and stuff was like everywhere. The soil was kind of like dangerous, and there was this like sheep farmers. And the government was trying to tell them like, hey, like this is dangerous. There's radioactive stuff. Like, be careful what you do. Don't use this. Don't use that. And this researcher that kind of like went there and talked to people and was like, hey, why are they not listening to the government? And they thought they have to continue giving them the information about like this radioactive stuff and how dangerous it is. And then it turns out like they all know that they have the information. It's just that they don't trust the government because of the past experiences and all of that. And that was like one of the studies that people usually cite on like, hey, it's not just about the information. People have the information. It's that there's a lack of trust between like people or the government or people or your audience and the person that is giving the message. Or not in that case, but in other cases, it might be that I belong to a group that we have the information, but if I accept the information and change my behavior, like my group might ostracize me. Or it might be that I have the information, people are on board, but I don't know how to make those changes. I don't have the money. I don't have the agency to do that. So there's all these other factors that go into why you might change your attitude and change your behavior. So with years of all this research and experiences and stuff, or have we have seen during COVID, where people are getting the information of how the vaccine works and all of that, and they still don't change their behavior, then we realized, okay, the deficit model of communication, this idea that if people just have facts and data, they're going to change their mind. It's not, it's like Dominique Broussard calls it, like, it's like a zombie model, right? It's like, it's still there, it's still alive. We keep thinking like education, education, we're going to educate people, but it's just like, it's not going to work. So, how do we, especially in topics that are more emotionally charged or controversial, um, think of this as like a strategic plan where we can figure out how we can equip people with the different things they need to change an attitude or a behavior. So when we say deficit model, that's basically what we mean.
Yeah. And then like there's other proposed models or whatever theories of just like, okay, like we need to be shifting more towards like dialogue and participatory, where it's more like, okay, we have to acknowledge that like our audiences have some level of expertise that we may not even be aware about. But if we're only approaching them as just like, I'm the expert in the room, you need to listen to me.
Uh,
You're only closing off that audience or that community instead of acknowledging either their lived experiences or yeah, whatever their field of work or whatever expertise that they have also can contribute to the conversation or inform
mhm.
how they're viewing the specific problems. But if you're not even doing your research on who you're talking to, then again, it just defaults into just like, let me just tell you this fact and then you
Right,
will know, like
right.
and I think okay, so I think this just ties back. I feel like we always have like the same conversations because it just brings me back to like, okay, the need for community building with like with as part of like our science communication strategy, in addition to the times that we're in as well. We're like, okay, you just mentioned earlier when I brought up the Apple example of just like, okay, well, is should I be concerned about this wax? Because there are harmful things that happen in science that feed into this Maha movement or, like drinking raw milk, even though
Mhm,
there's like decades of science backing up that like, oh, we're doing this to like kill bacteria or
agree.
whatever. But oh yeah, I feel like I'm just recycling my same argument or my same frustration of just like, how do we do it in a time when like everyone is doing their own research? Everyone believes that like their facts or like their truth, we're not valuing experts and their expertise. So it just feels like the deficit model is like the only way to do it because it feels like you're just like screaming into the void because like no one is listening to like data driven facts.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And just like a caveat that like facts and data and providing those is like it's good, right? It's just
Mhm.
probably is not enough. And in
Yeah.
some cases it might work if someone is like, hey, I need the facts on this so that I can make a decision. But I think to your point, I think a big part of it is like we are frustrated. I remember, man, that's such a good point. I remember I did a workshop many years ago on empathy, right? And we're talking about like this is a long-term process. You might not even get your audience to change a behavior, attitude, or anything. Like remember that and everything. And someone came to me and said, first of all, he said like, "Well, Bill Nye talks like this," because like we were like there were some examples of like Bill Nye just like being really mean about like
Yeah.
people
He's
that
he's a little arrogant in his delivery
he is, right, and
sometimes.
he's a great educator, but he has,
Yes,
like, some
yes.
really specific, like, bad communication examples, and then he said, like, I don't have time. I genuinely don't have time to build this relationships and do this and this and this, like, I need something very fast. I need to tell people the facts." And it's interesting because I was like it's so many years ago we had this workshop. If you would have started then, which I really hope he has started then, until now that you had, like, this COVID thing, you've already had enough time to build a relationship. We sometimes are so focused on like, but this moment is a critical moment and I need to say something now, that you lose the future and the now. And that is why I think we all have to like, it's like when you're drowning and you just like really, what do you call it? Like you're pedaling, but instead you're going down and you just have to be like, okay, like I'm either gonna die now or I'm just gonna like have to come up, take a breath, and figure out a strategy. So it's kind of like,
Mhm.
how do you take a moment, realize like you cannot do something in this moment the way you're doing, and you have to strategize for the land. You have to
Yeah.
strategize how you're gonna come out of this like whirlpool. You have to strategize how to do this. And it's not gonna work if you just like shout in the void facts.
Yeah. I think that's also like a great point that you brought up of just like these impact campaigns, these strategy campaigns, like people want the instant feedback, the positive feedback of like, oh, we did change their minds, which some, some pieces of media or some pieces of content or whatever, a SciComm can accomplish that when it's like really well done or planned out or whatever, like when you see some documentaries. But for at least like our everyday day-to-day science communicator working for like a comms department, like, like writing one blog post isn't gonna freaking do anything, or like one infographic. But it's taking that infographic, building a relationship, building a library. How do you make sure that people have access to it? Like just thinking,
Mhm.
like really thinking through and knowing that, like, okay, this is like what I thought would just be like an easy thing that I'm just going to post up in like a couple days is now taking me like, this is a year-long initiative
Yeah,
of like trying to build trust or trying to build
yeah.
an effective strategy just to at least move it one notch forward in like a
Right,
positive
right.
direction.
Even the documentary that is gonna be, like, one documentary that really changed everyone and everything, like, the amount of research and work and strategizing that goes beforehand that we don't see, it's like there's all of that going into it for this moment for you to see this one documentary, like Blackfish,
Mhm.
Tilikum with, like, the killer whale, right? So it was like a documentary, like research and all of that. It worked on it for a long time. You watch a documentary and like suddenly like policies are being changed, right? Um, a good example that comes to mind is during COVID. When do you remember they said, "Oh, you actually kind of like don't really need to wear a mask." And one of
Yeah,
the
yeah,
reasons
yeah.
they said, and I can't remember what they said. Like, I think they didn't say don't wear a mask. They kind of said
Yeah.
something like, "Yeah, you kind of like don't need it." And one of the reasons they said it was like at the moment they were very, very worried about the shortage of mask and medical equipment for hospitals. So they made this, like, I feel like
Mhm.
executive communication decision that was like, okay, we need to do something right now for that. So we're gonna kind of like tell people like you don't really need to wear masks, right? Then what happened was with time and more science and all of that, it came out that the masks are really, really, really important. So please do wear masks. And what happened was like people were like, okay, were you lying to us before? Did you not know? Did you lie to us so that you can, or did you like said it in a way so that you can get more of that medical equipment? So you lost trust, right? But
Mhm.
I think if at that moment they would have strategized for the future and would have said, okay, if I make that statement and then I have to like backtrack that statement or say something different or all of that kind of stuff, what's gonna happen? Like right now, I'm breaking a trust. So I might be like, okay, this is gonna be very hard, and I might lose some medical equipment, or I have to find another way to frame that. But I cannot say something that would have long term and like negative impact. I have to choose a strategy that keeps me as a trustworthy person, and I might even not be able to like benefit at this moment as much as I want, but long term, it's not going to be disastrous. I'm not going to lose this like insane amount of trust based on this one example. That's again another example of I think like strategizing for the future rather than for the critical moment that it's now without thinking of the consequences.
I feel like the underlying root theme that we can think about in terms of like, I've seen other science communicators or scientists of just being like, again, like kind of playing into that trope of just like, they don't know enough, they're stupid, people are just in their ideologies and da 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 da. But it's like, okay, the underlying frustration or one of the underlying pillars is like the lack of transparency,
Mhm,
you know?
mhm,
So it's just like, okay, like you just mentioned, like, oh, okay, if the NIH just took like a beat to think long term, how would this affect? I'm like, but in a times of chaos or
mhm,
like urgency, they're not strategizing that. But also that's also a lack of like infrastructure to support long term
yeah,
strategy to plan for like potential epidemics,
yeah,
and
yeah,
then we can go down that rabbit hole of like how this administration doesn't trust in that or value that.
right, right,
But also with just like even for like, okay, the apples thread, of just like, well, not everyone knows how a farm works, but it's not like we have access to that. So like how do we increase like transparency to just show this is what this is happening. This is how
Mhm.
this is happening. This is how we're growing it or whatever. Like we're so like passive and like what we kind of consume or like interact with that I think that's what also helps like foster or flame a lot of anti-science things because it comes down to like, okay, well, I don't like I can fall into like big pharma tropes of just like, okay, why do we spend millions of dollars on these ads, but we don't really understand fully how a vaccine works, or um, the wellness industry is still complaining about big pharma and their push, but then they're also selling products without
Mhm.
like data or like efficacy or whatever.
Right.
And even within our own government of just like we can't trust what they say because we don't even know if we have a long history of our government doing shady shit.
Mhm.
Um or even like the same trope of like I've seen other, our friend Lab Muffin has been posting threads of just like, science has a shitty reproducibility rate. We have predatory publications. You can even trust everything that you read. It's like, okay, we can't trust everything.
Right, right,
We
right,
have to do our own research.
right.
Big pharma, big profit, big wellness is out here to attack us. But so, like, yeah, I think,
Yeah,
yeah, it goes back to like, we're just drowning
right,
and we're
right.
trying to breathe out and like, okay, maybe we can just strategize a little bit to just push for change, but it's
Yeah.
still such like an infrastructure shit show.
I genuinely think a big part of that is because we don't have enough people with actual strategic communication training in most of
Hmm.
these organizations. And I'm not necessarily talking about like the strategic communication of what you do, but the strategic communication of like why you should trust me, like trust, like
Mm.
why should you trust me? Like, how can I empower you? How can I show you what the norms are? What are the risks? What are the benefits? Like, all of
Hmm.
those different things in different parts of the industry, and having like more unified places that kind of like encourage just like collective action. Like, what is a place that is like, I'm a place that I can bring together people that, like, first of all, there's funding to hire these people that work on like trust based strategic communication, and these people that are hired then can come together as collective action, talk together, figure out like what is like the big picture strategy. Then we can bring back some of that. And I know places like AAAS, like during their like conferences, they have like themes of like trust and stuff. Some science communication conferences and all of that, like they try to talk about the themes of trust, but I might have been missing it. Like maybe I don't know about it as much. Which, if you know of these places, please email us, let us know. But the fact that like so many of us can't name the collective action backbone that is bringing these people and organizations together to specifically talk about that, I think that's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think about there's some, I've been job hunting or whatever, and there have been like some like comms departments I've been looking for. Brings me back to another, a rabbit hole that I brought up in some previous episodes of just like, okay, like a lot of comms comes down to like marketing, like
Mhm.
how are we like persuading, changing minds, getting people to like buy stuff or
Right.
consume stuff to like generate more profit or more awareness or whatever. But it also comes down to this ease like of like is this propaganda? Is this manipulation or whatever? But I think when it comes to just like yeah, I feel like the reinforcement or like the marketing or the comms strategy or even for like those that hire what do you call it when you hire uh, like a crisis PR
Mhm.
firm or something like that when like you would hire in case like something crazy happens. But that's still very in the terms of just like marketing and user consumption kind of thing
Mhm.
rather than just like, oh, how are we trust building and having an informed public to understand and like and build this transparency and understanding of like how science works and affects them on their day to day or affects their policy or their health and et cetera, et
Yeah.
cetera.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. I think this shows up when like in the past, like I've had like projects or worked with people, places and stuff where I think they thought that they have a strategy and there was some strategy, but then it's kind of like, okay, I think what you are describing is not your whole strategy. It's your tactic. So like just like a mini version of like strategy. And again, like I'm using like the work of like John Besley and Anthony Dudo, how they talk about strategies. They're like, okay, you have a goal, which is like the behavioral change you want to see in an audience. So, for example, I want people to plant native seeds. right? So that's the behavior. It can't be like, I want people to engage. Like, what is engage? Like, you want them to vote? Do you want them to pay something? You can't say, I want people to be excited. That's an emotion. That's not a behavior. So when you decide what that behavior is, then what are the beliefs and the feelings you need to change in order to get that behavior? So it might be for them to believe that these native plants benefit them, that if they don't have enough of them, it would be harmful and there's risks. It might be that a norm building. So like, oh, look, all your neighbors are like having more like native plants. And agency here, so easy. You can just like order the seeds and we send it to you. They have to like feel joy and excitement and also like sadness for the loss of nature. So these are your objectives. So you can decide what the behavior changes and then you could be like, I want to do these things. Based on that, then you come up with your tactic. And the tactic is, listen, my audience is, for example, millennials with like middle class, socioeconomical state that like live in these like US states. And then I could be like, okay, in that case, they're on YouTube and Instagram. They're watching a lot of like lifestyle content. They don't have enough money and like right now. So how about you make these like YouTube series and like how do you like improve your yard with and then just like put in between like these native seed information. What usually people come to us is the tactic. They're like, oh, I have this like social media campaign to show these stories. And you're like, this is great, but this is your tactic. What are the emotions you want to change? What do they trust you? Do they feel that about you? Do they believe that you're a trustworthy person and that you're transparent? Do they believe that if they do that, it's actually going to benefit them? And then when you have all of these, what do you want people to do with this social media and this campaign? Do you want them to vote? Do you want them to click on this and go in this website and go out and save the wolf? What is it that you want them to do? And I feel like a lot of companies, a lot of organizations, when they think of strategy, it's usually closer to the tactic than all these other things that they need to do before that with data, with audience analysis, with information, with all of that to make all these decisions. And that's to me sad.
Damn, Daniel, that was very deep. That was very informative. No, I think that distinguish really helped a lot, at least internally with me, because I feel like I've fallen victim, like, like you and I do
Yeah,
workshops in
yeah.
science communication strategy. And I understand that, but I guess I like would bring in the tactic underneath like the umbrella. But
Mhm.
I think like differentiating it and making it more explicit, I think makes so much more sense because when I'm like working with independently with some people of just like I have this really great video idea and I want to inform like policy change or whatever. But then it's just like, okay, well, yeah, like is the video the actual like right thing that would be useful for like this specific situation? Is it or do you need to pivot or try a different tactic in order to meet the
Mhm.
strategy that you're trying to accomplish? Oh my god, I learned so much. And you're wearing such a cute shirt. You look so cute,
I just
Ray, like
had
a
a
little
button up
dot.
and I closed it because I look like I came out of a trash can and I thought, what can I do to not look like I came out of a trash can? And I wore a button
You look
up
so cute. Let
and I
me
buttoned it up until the last one. And I have a
I should have done the same thing. My thing's all wrinkly. Um,
Can I add something? So you mentioned something that I think is super important, and that is, oh, look at us, we both have the same style. Um, there is something about like keeping it real. I think when you think very academically about strategy, there's always this thing of like, who's your audience? Decide on your goal. Now decide on your objective. Now decide on your tactic. Realistically, you and I work with a lot of people that come with the tactic. You and
yeah.
I, a lot of times, have the tactics, right? Like you and I, like I, this should be a song. Like a lot of times I'm like, I don't want to like strategize from the beginning. I have my Instagram, I have my social media. I know how I draw. I know what my style is. So I actually have my tactic. But the thing that we could do is like, okay, if my tactic is in place already because of resources or what I have, or I have a really fun story idea, then how can I decide on how can I intentionally think about my audience and the behavior I want to see in them and the emotions I want to elicit them. Because then I could be like, okay, this is my style and this is how I do things. But I'm on Instagram. Probably most of my audience, because of who I am and my audience and my humorous style, is other millennials in my age range. So I'm not going to talk about if you are like an elderly person and you need to do that, here's what you could do, because they're not watching this. So being strategic in this case is that as I'm choosing my stories, I'm going to try to gear them more towards millennials, or deciding that, okay, if my style is humor, then I'm going to talk about like these humorous thing for this audience, and the behavior change would be something that humor is better at nudging rather than something more serious that is not something that I can change. So knowing your limitations based on your tactics and reinforcing, kind of like being like, okay, I think I need to talk about this. I think this is the belief I need to change because my audience is millennials. They're not going to donate money, but they're going to buy biodegradable stuff. So that is how my message then changes. Does that make sense?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'm curious then if we're like bringing it back to full circle to like the two threads that we had on. It's
Mhm,
just like, sometimes threads or like social media can be like self-serving or just like, everyone is a thought leader, like putting, like us with our freaking podcast right now, like pretending that we're thought leaders in SciComm. But please hire us. So, but I guess like, okay, so like I guess if it's like a free for all for anyone's opinion to like, comment or whatever. So if we are addressing someone who is concerned about how their food is grown, how like pesticides are like affecting them, they're showing, I wouldn't say, maybe, I don't know if it's a level of vulnerability for them to like show
I haven't thought
that
about
like,
that. Yeah.
because like at one point, like, I know they're technically kind of shit talking in terms of just like, where the conspiracy comes in of just like, this thing is fucking scary. I
Mhm,
don't know what, like, I don't like that this is on my food.
mhm.
I'm expressing this to like share my concerns out there. And, but because we're so like polarized and we're all mean girls to an extent in our comments,
Yeah,
we're all mean
yeah.
girls. But it's like, okay, it takes a level of like vulnerability for this person to be like, hey, I am concerned about this thing. And then for some scientists to be like, oh, everyone's just so fucking stupid and doesn't know their education. It's like, how do we change? Like, how are we going to be? Yeah, again, I think that comes back to like what was nice about Dr. Kizzy's post of just
Mhm.
like she was still able to humanize, even though it can be so freaking frustrating when
Yeah,
someone is just like not understanding, not trusting, not believing
yeah.
the science when everything has been laid out or we have years of work to establish this. And so, yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but maybe that was like a different perspective to add if I'm gonna like both sides this.
I say, I think this is really the key, what you just mentioned, like, the way you were like, I think the moment you said, like, "Oh, I think they're being vulnerable to say something is scary," and I suddenly my heart was like, "What a beautiful."
That's your trigger word. That's like when you wake up, you're
Yes,
like,
yes,
we're talking
like,
about vulnerability.
yeah, that is my trigger word, that. But I think that's the key, which is you were being very empathetic about, like, it's like, what is the why behind someone posted something? Instead of
Mhm.
going like, "Oh, they said that because they're an idiot," and, like, contention and, like, all of that kind of stuff, you're like, I think you hurt them. You said, "I think they're scared. I think they're
Mhm.
scared," and they put it out there because 'cause they're kinda like, "Is everyone else scared? Like, I'm kind of freaking out, like, I'm being vulnerable." And, like, imagine if, like, a kid, like, runs into your room and says, like, "I'm scared, like, because it's dark," and if you would be like, "Ha, you fucking idiot, like, stupid, there are no
Just
monsters."
turn the light switch on. Don't you know how electricity works?
Exactly, and, like, "You think monsters are real? What a little bee," like, all of that. And instead you're like, "Oh, it's okay." You hold their hands, you go in the room, you're like, "You're no monsters. Let's look together under the bed. Like, do you want me to sit here with you?" How is it that, like, we can empathize with that and we can, like, come up with all these, like, empathetic strategies of being there, building that trusting relationship, checking something together under the bed, all of that, versus, like, the fucking idiot. And I think what you just mentioned is very much that, like, can you hold their hand and just sit with them and be like, "Yeah, I know it's scary. Like, I get it. And do you wanna look under the bed together?" You know what I mean?
Yeah. Look at us, we're so empathetic, but also okay, really real quick, another callback to our last episode where we kind of went down like the rabbit hole of like politics and like there was one moment where you were like, there's just some things where I'm not gonna be a bridge builder,
Mhm.
you know? So like, okay, we can have some science communicators that can be bridge builders for those that are like concerned about their health and wellness, or
Mhm.
for the Maha crowd, so to say. Um, but then it makes me think again, like being on the internet, on my personal feed, I follow a lot more politics stuff. And so I forgot what the journalist's name is. It's like Vance Vaughn, something like that. He's like a
Uh,
black journalist that's popular from CNN or something.
okay.
But anyways, there's a bill about like the Safe Voter Act. I forgot what it's called, but it's just like the thing where yeah, okay. And so this journalist was just like, "Hey, like this side, like the left is concerned about this thing, but the right is concerned about that thing.
Mhm.
Like how is there a way that we can like meet in the middle and have some kind of what's the word?
Mutual
Um
compromise?
yeah, but like compromise. Yes.
Mm.
Have some kind of compromise. And so I click on the comments, of course, and I go in it. And then instantly people, especially on the left, were just like, I
Traitor!
can't believe no, yeah, exactly. Traitor. Like, I can't believe you're both sidings this. Like,
Mhm.
the other side is fucking wrong and da 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 da. Like, we shouldn't be doing this. Like, they're the ones that are like fascist and blah 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 blah.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's
Jones.
just like
Sorry, in my head, I'm, like, trying to remember.
yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
And so like I shared that in my story, and then like the story before that though, then I shared something where people were just like, okay, whatever. I'm going down the rabbit hole. I don't
No,
need to
no,
click on that.
continue. I think this is important.
Well, yeah, of just like a post, like because I'm from Florida and I have a lot of people in my feed that are right winged. And so, so like sometimes I like, even though I think it's like not everyone, there's some friends that are checking my stories, but I know some of them are like pretty Republican. So sometimes I'll post some things, but I'm trying not to instigate because I'm trying not to add to fire.
Okay.
It's not helpful
Yeah,
anymore or whatever.
yeah,
I'm not trying to virtual signal.
yeah.
But I just kind of like shared what's his name? Vince? What was his name?
Van Jones.
Van Jones, yes. So I shared his post, but then I shared another post right after that was more, progressive in the terms of like
There was a solution that we can do.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Mhm,
Yeah, just like, okay, like if this is or no, it was more of just kind of like why it's a bad idea
mhm,
for having like voter IDs because you're like reducing accessibility or like women that have different last names or whatever.
mhm.
Um oh, let me pause for a moment. Yeah, I don't know where I'm going with that. Like there's no need to like share that.
Can I add something which I think is there's, like, so many different bits of this that is important.
Okay.
I think you know your audience, right? Like your audience is like your family and friends and all of that who is like also in Florida and you're like, okay, I'm not just for like my progressive friends, I'm for my friends that also like identify more conservative. And I think there's a part of this that you're like, I see your concern and I want to also say this. You're saying like this
Yeah.
you're kind of like yes anding. You're like yes
Yeah.
and like I see that concern and here's a perspective that is like kind of like showing that I hear your concern and here's some of the things that might happen like you might not be able to vote like I understand your
Yeah.
concern and you personally might not be able to vote and I think there is something about like you're making the long-term strategic decision that I want to be a trustworthy source of information in my community, right? Like I'm not
Mhm.
going to change any other progressive's mind. Like that's not where my power is. That's not where my influence is. It's that I am like a person that like people in my own communities in Florida like I think loves and kind of trusts and I think that is really the community I want to build a relationship with. So why not do that? So in my opinion, you could have shared something that would appeal to like other progressive friends that you have, which probably might not do much because that's the same information they're getting. Or you might be like, hey, there are other people here that might trust me. Why can I not validate that they have certain concerns that I see and offer some more?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's being strategic, in my opinion.
And does that make me a traitor? Am I being canceled for, like, not being like, I think that's like that's like a real thing, because it's just like, I have friends that are, like, automatically being like, "I'm excommunicating my family because of this," or, "I'm no longer in communication with this friend because of, like, a different belief." So then it's just like, yeah, like, how do us as scientists and even as individuals, like yeah, it's just hard because it's like, we're so strong because everything is politicized.
Yeah, yeah.
We're just so strong into our thing, but, like, okay, if we're bringing this back down to just, like, the end of the day, we have to talk about how important science is. Like, how
Mhm.
do we actually come to some kind of, like, reasonable middle ground conclusion,
Right.
even if it means like compromising on shit that shouldn't be fucking compromised because it's common sense,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
I definitely am very scared of, like, saying something because I'm trying to appeal to someone that I might actually think I might influence, and then the other people that are supposed to be, like, in my, like, idea realm be like, "I can't believe you, like, are even open to, like, talking about this because there's always someone who'd be offended, and I feel like we are going to this realms of, like, puritanism that is like this or
Mhm.
nothing. If you don't say that, you're out of my realm. And one of the things that I keep thinking about is I remember Catherine Hayhoe, who's like a climate scientist, and she's like evangelical, but she is very good at like bringing in religious communities. And one of the things she was saying is that I don't know if she still does that or not, but at the time, she said, if someone asks me if you're a Democrat or Republican, I say I'm a Canadian because I don't want to be right. Like, I don't want to be associated with a political party so that I'm like seen through those filters. And so I noticed a
Mm.
lot of times when I am posting things, I'm not saying believe in this or believe in that. I'm talking about how we talk about what we believe
Mm.
because I'm worried if there is more content about what I personally believe, especially politically, and I'm at this point talking about the Iran stuff more than the
Mhm.
America stuff. I'm talking about the Iran stuff because
Mhm.
I think I have more diversity of ideas in my Iranian community. My American community is pretty much we're in the same ideology, so that's
Mhm.
not something that I have to worry about. But in my Iranian community, I think there's, like, diversity of ideas, and I have to be much more careful about what I say, so I don't usually talk about, like, "This is what I believe, and here's what I believe." I usually talk about, "This is how I believe we should communicate to each other about topics," and that's a strategic decision because my message on how we should communicate is literally for all of the people in the ideology spectrum.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
And to a point of, like, who there's people that I, like, feel like I can be a bridge for. It's
Mm.
kinda like even in, like, the climate spectrums, like, you have the skeptics and you have all of that, and then you have, like, the batshit crazy people that you're like, "I'm not gonna influence you, and I'm not gonna touch you," which is, like, a very small percentage. Don't have to
Yeah.
do much.
Yeah. Yeah. I think maybe some hope in, I guess, how do we wrap up? How do we wrap up? I think I want to just call back to our previous episode where we talked about the Harmony Labs narrative observatory. I think that helps with like strategizing and picking up the value systems that people have and gravitate towards that can you can tailor your messaging to. We had another resource in our last episode. I don't remember.
Can we also add that sometimes the easiest way you could do that is just like being a good listener and observer of other people?
Yeah.
I think as communicators, we usually see that a lot as like, okay, what can I communicate? Rather than
Yeah.
part of communication is to listen. So if you're
Mhm.
thinking strategically and long term, how can you be in more spaces and provide more opportunities for people to tell you what is their attitude, what is their value, what are their thinking, what are they posting? How are they talking about things? So how can you be a more I remember I once interviewed Joe Bruchak, who's a Abenaki elder, lovely, lovely person. And he always says, is like, we have two ears, two eyes, one mouth,
Mm.
right? So how can we
Mhm.
be better listener, better observers, and then think of that in terms of communication and use resources like Harmony Lab, like Ashley Landrum did a really good study for PBS where she has like different audiences of science topics based on generations, what platforms are they on, which we can link that as well. But you could use that to see like what people are interested in learning about, what platform they're on, and all of that. Yeah, so find all of the ways you can learn more about your audience.
Yeah, it goes back to just like try not to default into the deficit model of communication and go more towards the dialogue participatory, which is like acknowledging that your audience also has expertise and knowledge and lived experiences
Mhm.
that can inform you and help you with your strategy. But yeah, at the end of the day, is like how do we be good neighbors and good people by just having curiosity and empathy? Even if like some of the stuff they be saying, you're like, yeah,
Yeah.
you know. Again, no peer pressure. I won't cancel you, I promise, but maybe Ray and I will talk shit about you, so we'll see, you know?
Oh.
Well, this was fun. Thanks for another episode, Ray.
Look at us with our professional attire.
Oh,
Mm,
so buttoned up. Yeah, so if people send in your gossip, No one sends in gossip. I think we just do a bad job with that. But tell us your gossip. Tell us what you're hating on.
That please like and subscribe and rate us on Spotify, YouTube, or you can't rate on YouTube. Like us on YouTube. I don't know, and the Apple Podcast. And please suggest us to your friends because we realize we are really shit at marketing this. So market it for us. Thank
Yeah. Well, thank you to our 20 listeners for choosing to be friends with us. And we'll see you on the next one.
you. Bye.
Make my own rules, play my own games.